Okay, it looks like we are live here. Let me change my view. Want to first of all say good afternoon to everybody, assuming that you're in one of our time zones here. My name is Scott Fuller, founder of leavingthebayarea.com, and I want to welcome you to our Market Insider series, where every episode we travel the country to talk to a lot of our premier agents and talk about what's going on in those areas. And so today, I'm super excited. We are actually traveling south of the border today. We're going to be heading down to Cabo San Lucas, Land's End, and we've got Nick Fong with Los Cabos agent joining us today. So Nick, welcome. Appreciate you being here today.
Thanks, Scott. Glad to be here.
Awesome. Okay, so if you're looking at Nick right now and you're saying, this guy looks familiar, I think I've seen him before, it's probably because you've seen him on HGTV's Mexico Life series, where Nick's been on there. I mean, how many episodes have you done for HGTV now, Nick?
Yeah, so myself and my team have done 15 episodes so far.
15 episodes. Okay, so not only are you a rock star agent down there in Los Cabos, but you're also a TV star around the world. And for people who haven't seen that show, it's a great show. I mean, it makes you feel like you're kind of on vacation. You're just kind of relaxing, and you're, an hour at the beach type of a thing. But the premise, and tell me if I'm wrong on this, Nick, but the premise is that, somebody is interested in relocating to Cabo San Lucas. It might be a family, it might be a couple, and you're helping them look at some different properties that they might be interested in purchasing. And then at the end of the show, they buy a property, and there's kind of the end result. But I think what they don't really get into too much is, what does it take as far as the due diligence, the research, to get to that point before they come down and they meet with you. And that's really what we're going to go through today, right, Nick, is to talk about what are those things that you need to know about before considering either making a move to Cabo or potentially even investing in Cabo. So Nick, thanks again. Appreciate you taking the time with us today. And why don't you give me some background? You've got a really interesting background. So why don't we start off by telling us a little bit more about yourself and how you ended up in Cabo?
Yeah, so I'm originally from Chicago and born and raised. I have a real estate degree from the University of Illinois, Champaign-Urbana, and I graduated from college in the late 90s and decided, I wasn't ready for doing, what I thought the corporate world was. So I talked to my career counselor before graduating and said, what kind of a job can I do where I can just travel? And they said, well,
the dream job, right?
Yeah, right. And they said, well, you want to go into consulting? And I said, well, what am I going to consult? I'm 21 years old. I don't know anything. And they said, well, IT is a big thing. The whole Y2K thing is blowing up. And there are consulting firms that will hire you and train you. And I said, great, sign me up, got a job, graduated, and was doing IT consulting for 5 years. And what I started seeing happen was the real estate market was going crazy. You can be in the mortgage business, in the real estate sales business. And so what I decided to do was to do both. And I was doing that for a couple of years in Chicago, got out of the IT consulting arena. And in 2001, I actually came on vacation, not as a real estate professional, but just as a tourist, and managed to meet my wife on the second night that I was here.
Yeah, great story. Yeah.
So she's Mexican. She's relocated from Mexico City. A lot of people aren't from Cabo, even if you're Mexican. And not unlike a lot of places in the U.S., like California, I hear that a lot, that a lot of people relocate to California, not originally from California. Cabo San Lucas is kind of like an extension of California for us in the States. We're south of the border, 1,000 miles from San Diego. Yep. And so my first introduction was a vacation. It was spring break, 13 guys, 2 houses in the Pedregal.
We won't ask too many questions about the trip itself, but,
yeah. So great time, met my wife here, did the long distance relationship. 2004, December, moved down here. And it's been nearly 15 years now.
Yeah. It's interesting because a lot of people, when they're going to a tropical destination vacation, right? You spend a week or two, and then you're sitting there going, you know what? I just don't want to go home. You know, I want to stay here. And you actually figured out a way to do it. So, you know, and obviously you've been very successful with it. So congratulations. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's definitely living the dream. My friends say it all the time. It is a lot of work, but you know, I mean, I could be in Chicago in the snow, but I'm on the beach in the sunshine.
Living the dream. Well, it's funny because, you know, the inside joke in Cabo is everybody goes to Medano Beach and you've got the bar restaurant called The Office. And so everybody, you know, takes the selfie, right, and says, oh, rough day at the office, right? But for you, you actually, you know, that's your work environment. So it's just a lot of fun.
Funny you say that. I was actually there this morning at the office having breakfast with clients.
Were you really? Okay. Awesome view right there of El Arco and everything else. Perfect spot. Okay, well, Nick, let's get started. So I know that we're going to cover a lot of information. We're going to, you know, go through it pretty well in detail here. But maybe let's start off. You know, the questions that we get is, what are some of the more popular communities in the area, and what are some of those price points? So if you can take us in a little bit farther into some of those communities, and what can you get for the money to, you know, find out if it's feasible for people?
Okay, cool. So when I first came here in 2001, I actually rented a house in the Pedregal. Pedregal is kind of considered the Beverly Hills of Cabo San Lucas. It's perched up on the mountain overlooking the Cabo San Lucas Bay Marina, and it is one of the oldest gated communities in all of Los Cabos. People rent their villas there. People are full-time residents in the Pedregal. So you can get a condo there, let's say a 2-bedroom condo starting under $300,000, and you can go up to an $11 million house that's currently for sale and going to auction in the Pedregal. That's an 8-bedroom home, 10,000 square feet plus, you know, a mansion.
Is that, by the way, is that Jason Giammi's place?
It is, okay. Yes.
Yeah, I noticed that went into auction yesterday, and I think it's today and tomorrow, right? A 3-day auction. Correct. So interesting to see where that ends up.
Yes. So $10.9 million, no reserve. We'll see what happens.
Yeah.
And then you can back it off and get outside of the downtown Cabo San Lucas area and be in a community like, let's say, the more affordable, but still really nice finishes, great community, great amenities, community called Ventanas. And it's been an extremely successful development that has several phases in what we call the tourist corridor. That's the 20 miles in between our two cities. So everyone knows Cabo San Lucas, the Arch, Medano Beach. Our sister city is San Jose del Cabo. And San Jose del Cabo is actually where you fly into when you come into Cabo. And that space, that 20 miles in between the two cities, is where a lot of our hotels, a lot of our beaches, a lot of our housing communities are located, Ventanas being one of them. And so you can get a condo there, a 1-bedroom condo, around $100,000. You can get a 2-bedroom, a 3-bedroom condo in the $200,000 to $300,000 price range. And you can also be in a house starting in the mid-200s, going up to $600,000.
So $600,000, and that's what size house are we talking about for that?
So the upper end in a community like Ventanas, you're probably looking at around 2,700 square feet, 3 to 4 bedrooms, 3 to 4 bathrooms, 2-story rooftop terrace, amazing ocean views, view of the Arch, downtown city lights at night.
And are these typically gated communities?
Yes, so these are gated communities with a clubhouse, community swimming pool, fitness center. Depending on what phase you're in, it can have a spa, restaurant. So it has a lot of amenities.
That really does. And so what does it look like as far as, since those communities have all of those amenities, what type of homeowners association dues would you expect to pay either monthly or quarterly in addition to the price?
Yeah, roughly speaking, it's about $200 a month.
Okay.
And it includes a lot: the clubhouse, the security, 3 times a week garbage removal, which is blows my mind.
There must be a lot of garbage being put out of the houses, right?
Yeah, it's just different. I'm used to once a week.
Right.
Here in Mexico, it's 3 times a week, and in some communities, it's every day. So
You get used to once a week, especially after the holidays. It's like piling up, and you're like, okay, you're setting the trash bags next to your dumpster because it's not going to fit anymore. But 3 times a week, that's pretty good.
yeah, it's amazing, and all the clubhouse amenities and common area maintenance, the roads and things like that, the lighting.
Okay.
So I find it very affordable. I live in a gated community, and it's fantastic. And for our clients that aren't here all the time, it gives them the security that a lot of us want in what we think can only be provided in a condo complex, but it can be provided also in a gated home complex. And then you get your own yard and more space too.
Yeah, no, that's great. I mean, that's really unique. And kind of going into that a little bit more. So a lot of the people that we talk to who are maybe moving out of California or considering some different areas, a large demographic of that are retirees. And so, down where you're at, I mean, really everything is retirement based, or could be retirement based, I suppose, right? Because it's, built around with these amenities. Tell us about maybe some of the more popular spots that you're seeing, maybe along the corridor, and especially some of those beautiful golf courses that you guys have down there.
Yeah, so the 2 communities I mentioned already, the Pedregal, the Ventanas, those are definitely some of the 2 more requested communities of our clients, both from a rental perspective and purchasing. But other communities like Cabo del Sol, that's a great golf course community that's in the corridor. You're closer to the Cabo San Lucas side of town, just an 8-minute car drive into downtown Cabo San Lucas, but not far from San Jose del Cabo, 15 minutes. And you have beautiful beaches. You're in a community that has over 1,800 acres. Currently there are 2 hotels on site, the Sheraton and Fiesta Americana. The Four Seasons is coming into town in that development, and the Park Hyatt.
And I heard the Ritz-Carlton is also doing something there.
Yeah, that's in the San Jose side of town. Ritz-Carlton. Yep.
Yeah. Oh, that's going to be awesome. So we talked a little bit about, some people might come down there and say, okay, my goal is to retire down there and be there full time. Others might say, I'm interested in purchasing a property. However, maybe it's going to be as a second home. So we might go down there, a couple months out of the year, maybe Airbnb it or rent it out, for the rest of the time. What are the visa requirements depending on how long, your plan is to stay in the property or your ownership intention?
Okay, so time requirements or?
Well, let's say if my what I'm looking to accomplish is to be able to move down there specifically, what type of visa do I need, and at what point do I just go down there? I buy a property, but I'm not down there, very often. What are those requirements, and how are those different?
Yeah, good question. So most of our clients, they come down on a tourist visa, and that tourist visa people don't realize, but it's just a small little piece of paper that you get in the airplane or right before customs when you land in the airport here in Cabo.
Yeah.
You have to fill out your name, and it'll ask you how many days will you be in Cabo. And that's your tourist visa. That's something that they will stamp, and then you have to hold on to that and return it to the check-in line when you get your boarding pass to leave Cabo.
That's the thing that you're always coming back to the airport and you're scrambling like, oh my gosh, where did I put that piece of paper?
Exactly.
I don't think a lot of people really realize that, you kind of have to keep that piece of paper to get back to the United States, right? And then you're like,
yeah, absolutely. Otherwise, there's a fine you have to pay. It changes all the time. It's $50, $100. But that's your tourist visa. It can be issued up to 180 consecutive days that allows you to stay in Mexico and not have to leave. And so that's free, costs you nothing. And even some of our clients to this date own property and they only have a tourist visa. that they get at the airport every time they come into Mexico. Mhm.
I was gonna ask you, so the people who are just coming down and they're staying in their property for a short period of time, what are they doing with the property while they're not there? Is it sitting vacant, or are they trying to get some cash flow out of it, maybe renting it out short term?
We have a combination of all the above. So we have probably half of our clients that are not interested in renting, people using their condo or house. And then we have the other half that are really jumping on that bandwagon, the Airbnb kind of phenomenon, where it's really in vogue and the cool thing to do. The whole DIY, a lot of the reality TV shows have given a lot of fuel to the Airbnb phenomenon that we see here. We hear it globally. And so half of our clients are interested in doing that, half of them are not. And so very conservatively, what we've found, our clients are able to at least cover their holding costs by renting it out. But we have some clients that do a really good job, and they can make 10 to 15% return after expenses on their properties.
Yeah, and I think for a lot of people, maybe they're looking at the option saying, do I do a timeshare type of a thing, or do I actually buy deeded property? And then you can have a consultation with them, Nick, to say, okay, here's maybe a strategy we can put together to where if you want to have something where you have it available, at your disposal to use for a couple months out of the year, but here's how we can put together the income stream to at least break you even, right?
Yep.
Seems like that's kind of a win-win, right, for a lot of people.
Yeah, because you can have a zero cost property except for the initial purchase price. And then you can have a paid vacation anytime you want to use the property. And that's the majority of our clients are interested in that. But I would say in the last few years, more clients are only going to buy if there's a ROI on the property.
Got it. I want to address a question that just came up, and to the folks that are watching this, please, if you have any questions, we're going to try to cover as much information as we can. But Nick, a question for you. I have an existing condo already in Cabo, but I'm looking to upgrade to a larger condo or home. How is the process for selling in Mexico and rebuying? Second question to that is, do you sell property in the Campestre area? I probably hacked that.
Yeah, no.
Was I okay on that? All right.
Yeah, you're good.
If yes, what's the range for a 3-bedroom and the HOA?
Okay, so there's a few questions in there. So if you already own a property in Cabo, a lot of our American clients, they're very accustomed to a 1031 exchange, rolling profits into another property. That potentially could exist. So if Paula, if you have a property that you bought at a good price and you would stand to make some money on it, you could do for the U.S. government purposes on taxes, do a 1031 exchange. For Mexico, not so easy. You would have to have the property titled in a Mexican corporation to realize any tax saving benefits. But the selling process is very similar to back home. You will hire a real estate agent, sign a listing agreement, get it listed. When it's sold, the money will be dispersed from escrow into the account that you choose. And we have clients that, actually my meeting today at the office was a client just like what we're talking about. They'd sold a condo and the money was held in escrow from the sale proceeds, and they're buying a new construction project. And the escrow company allowed them to just hold that money in escrow to move into their purchase.
That's great.
And so they don't have to send the money back up to the States and worry about more wire transfer fees. And so Paula, it's definitely doable. We do it all the time for clients. This client this morning was part of meeting them was for that purpose. Campestre, yes, we do sell Campestre properties, lots, condos, and houses. So houses, we had a client buy a 3-bedroom there just over a year ago, and it was in the high 300s. And the HOA fees don't quote me on this, but it was somewhere, I think, around $300 a month. And that's going to be kind of your entry level. And then it goes up from there. You have houses in there that will be over $1 million.
Awesome. Okay, Paula, thanks for your question. And Nick, like I said, you guys have some really good strategies, I know, to be able to perform some of those little bit more difficult transactions that may, be kind of dependent on, another thing happening. So that's great. Kind of leads into what I want to talk about next is what is the average days on market right now? Would you define it as, a seller's market, a buyer's market? Is there even such thing down there? Or what does that look like?
Yeah, so people are just absolutely shocked to know that our average days on market in 2018 was over 400 days.
Is that right? And is that kind of across all price ranges, or is that skewed more towards maybe the higher end and not the lower end?
Okay, so definitely price sensitive, the days on market, but also community sensitive. So we have many micro niches in our market. And so we have properties, with that being said, that we will list a property and within a week it sells, or before it even gets to the market, it sells. Those are definitely the 5%ers, but I would say that if you're a seller, your expectation, generally speaking, is I'm gonna have to wait a year before it sells.
And so they're probably contacting you well ahead of time based off of what their strategy is and when their end, goal of wanting to be sold is, I would imagine.
Yeah, and also what time of the season, or what season are we going to the market? So our seasons are a little flip-flop from, I would say, the more traditional real estate market. When I was selling in Chicago, we tended to be busier during the spring, summertime, and when the weather was nicer. For us, our busy time is actually fall to spring, including the winter. And the summertime typically is our slower time because it's hotter down here. Yeah. People are not wanting to get away from that cold winter in Calgary, Canada. And so they're enjoying their time back home during the summer and then coming down here and snowbirding.
Yeah, I guess when you get into October, November, you're in the U.S., especially maybe some of the colder regions, you're thinking, it's getting really cold. Wow, wouldn't Cabo be nice? Let's call up Nick and take a trip down there and see, and so, yeah, you're kind of like, it's a great time to do it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's, we definitely see a peak in our business, like property tours in the wintertime and spring. So we're kind of coming off of our high season right now. We still stay extremely busy during the summer. Well, the business just kind of shifts a little. So we're working with sellers in the summertime to get the properties ready for the fall.
Got it. So let's talk a little bit more about, I think there might be a misconception that there's no financing available in Cabo. Mm-hmm. Can you talk a little bit about that, how it works with maybe seller financed opportunities, general financing, or do you really need to come in with cash?
Yeah, so for the longest time, Cabo was just a cash game. And in the early mid-2000s, it changed and there were several lenders lending money to foreigners to purchase in Cabo.
Okay.
Just like in the States with the economic meltdown, the banks contracted. They stopped lending in Mexico. And for the past, I would say, 6 years, we've had no bank financing until just recently. We now have a company called Global Mortgage, and they will finance a foreigner. We just actually closed our first loan last week. And
so this is really recent.
Yeah, really
wow.
recent.
Okay, timing's good on this then.
Yeah, and the only thing is people aren't super excited about the loan terms, but as we see Global Mortgage get more traction, I believe the terms are going to get better. But right now, 50% down, 9.99% interest, and a 15-year loan, no prepayment.
Got it. Okay. And then what are some typical seller financing terms? How much do you have to put down? How long is the note for?
Sure.
Rate, that sort of thing.
What we typically see is 35 to 50% down with seller financing, an average of 6% interest, and a loan term no more than 5 years, but a loan amortization up to 30 years. So you have a balloon feature after the 5 years.
And what's the strategy for the purchaser in that situation? If they've got a 5-year term on it, is it to have paid off that loan within 5 years, or is it to do some other alternative, financing for that?
What I've seen with our buyers looking for seller financing, because seller financing definitely is, you're going to be able to negotiate seller financing terms better with the seller that's motivated to sell the property than a bank that says, this is my criteria, here is what I have to do per my underwriting guidelines, right? And so the seller financing buyers are typically selling a business, they're nearing retirement, they're going to get a big bonus from work, or they're going to be able to start drawing on retirement funds. And so the 3-5 years, they can more easily, in their minds, say, I can pay off that loan, or I'm going to, by then, retire and sell my house in California.
Right.
Have more than enough to pay off the loan on the house in Cabo San Lucas.
So it gets them in there, gets them into the property. They have a strategy to be able to pay that off at some point, based off of some financial event or life event coming up. And it gets them, some time spent down there. So that's great. Win-win.
Yeah. And then, for the 5 years, like talking about that 50% of the time buyer where they're wanting to rent it out, the cash flow is paying for the mortgage note.
Absolutely. So let's talk a little bit about when I think there's a lot of confusion on this. When you buy a house or property in Cabo or in Mexico, period, do you actually own the house? Do you own the land? Or what do you own or not own?
Yeah, that's a big misconception. People think it's leasehold property. The property actually is freehold. Where it gets confusing is, as a foreigner, American or Canadian to Mexico, buying in Cabo San Lucas, you have to set up a real estate trust. And it's really no different than back home. When I was selling real estate in Chicago, I had clients that had a living trust, a family trust that they were buying real estate in. And so generally speaking, the legal structure is such that a bank will be the trustee. They set up a legal entity, this trust, and you as the buyer, homeowner, are the beneficiary of that trust. And the trust is set up for a 50-year term. And after that 50 years, you can renew it, and you can renew those trusts in perpetuity. There's no expiration of your ownership. Okay.
Now, how do you pronounce that? Because I'm gonna. Fideicomiso?
Kind of. It's fideicomiso. Fideicomiso.
Okay. Awesome. And what's generally the cost to set something like that up?
Okay. Yeah. So if you're setting up a brand new one, it's roughly $2,000 to set it up. That will include your first year maintenance fee, and every year your maintenance fee on average is $500.
So it's really, aside from the maintenance fee, it's not much different than the structure of what you're talking about, where you're setting up a trust here, your living trust, right, for your assets and other things that you put your own property in. So it's a very similar concept. So Nick, as far as like people who, if I decide, okay, I've decided I'm going to go, move to Cabo, I'm going to sell my house here in the Bay Area. I've got a lot of furniture. I have a car. What do I take with me? Because obviously when we're talking about, a move within the States, it's pretty simple. You're going to have a larger cost if you're taking more items that you didn't necessarily need or that you might repurchase when you get there. Obviously those costs could be a lot higher when you're taking it out of country. So what do you see most people do as far as their, furniture, cars, personal items, things like that?
Okay, so what I see, without a doubt, probably 90% of the time, our clients that are buying something here and relocating at least half of the year, they're not bringing their stuff down. They're buying brand new here, or the majority of our properties, when they're sold on resale, they're sold furnished. And
nice.
The main reason why is it's typically a foreigner that owns it, American and Canadian, and the furniture is set up for that house or condo.
Yeah.
It
And
just
they're clearly not going to take it with them to wherever their next destination is, right?
correct.
Yeah.
So that was very odd for me coming from Chicago. It's like, never saw a property sold furnished, and it's the flips on, on properties here in Cabo. So the majority are sold furnished, and so most of our owners don't have to furnish their properties. And so when they're thinking of relocating here, they're not having to ship their furniture and personal, clothes and stuff like that, of course, or
personal items.
Exactly. And vehicles, kind of the same thing. I would say maybe 50-50. Our clients are driving their vehicles down or shipping them down. And then you can still have a US plated car in Cabo San Lucas, no problem whatsoever. You just have to maintain those license plates current.
Okay. So for the person who lives somewhere between, let's say, San Jose and Cabo San Lucas, does it financially make sense to even have a car down there if you have the taxi system, if you have Uber, compared to what the cost of maintaining your car, because the roads aren't probably not the best, right, in some areas. So you're going to have, maybe higher maintenance costs, you're going to have insurance, gas, things like that. So what do you see people do? What would be your recommendation?
It really depends where you buy your property. So a lot of our clients that are buying in the downtown Marina area, they don't need a car. In fact, parking is very scarce in those areas. So you might not even have a place to park your car if you had one. And then you can walk everywhere.
Yeah.
And then for the occasional Costco, Walmart type visit, you just get a taxi or an Uber. And by comparison though, if you're in the corridor, you're not getting to necessarily downtown walking. So the clients that are in the communities like a Ventanas or a Cabo del Sol that I mentioned earlier, you're going to have your own car or cars for that matter.
Mm-hmm. And I think the goal is for a lot of people who are moving to Cabo, they just want to keep it simple, right? It's like we're coming down here to enjoy beach life, to simplify, downsize, and so one less thing that's going to provide stress is probably a better thing, right? To keep it real simple.
Yeah, and what's really cool, we're in the Baja. Off-roading is big, so the Baja 1000. So a lot of people get their ATVs or their Polaris Razors, and they're completely street legal, and you can just cruise around town on one of those, and then if you need to, go off-roading, go on the beach, go up into the mountains. So a lot of our clients...
Do you have one of those, Nick?
I don't, because I wouldn't have time to use it. I'm working a lot, but I've contemplated. I actually had, for a period of the time, a golf cart getting around our community, and I just wasn't using it. So.
Oh, you weren't using the golf cart either to get around the community, huh?
No, okay. I wasn't.
But you kind of you felt cool while you're driving around the community, but then you're thinking, I don't really need. It's kind of pointless, right?
Exactly. Just taking up space in the garage.
Yeah, exactly. Kind of on that subject, let's talk a little bit more about recreation. Obviously, that's why people are going there. So many tourists going there and people moving there. Right. What are some of the really popular things that people are going there to do?
The two top things that have put Cabo on the map is golf. We have top golf courses and also the fishing. And so we have actually the largest fishing tournament in the world held every October called the Bisbee Black and Blue. And it's a multi-million-dollar fishing tournament, and it really put Cabo on the map a couple decades ago when it got started, and it's just super popular. And so starting with those two sports activities, fishing and golf, there's ATVs, there's surfing, kiteboarding is huge, windsurfing in the area that we call the East Cape in Los Barriles. They have an international tournament every year during the summer. That's super huge. We also have skydiving, zip lining, bungee jumping.
Pretty much everything, right? There's so much to do.
Yeah, anything around water or outdoor mountain biking, mountains, desert, people that like to horseback ride. We just had a client contact us last week, can I bring my 2 horses down to Cabo? Yeah,
okay,
so we actually have a real estate agent on our team, Lori, that is a horse lover, owns horses, been here for 20 plus years. So she's like our horse expert, right? And
that's great. Yeah.
And then, we have people that, big boaters, they'll get a boat and go sailing. My son was doing sailing classes this year. So there's a lot of activity. Tennis is big. It's really become a destination for tennis over the last 4 years. We have now an annual ATP tennis tournament every July and August, and a lot of international recognition from that.
So what things are you involved in? Are you the one that's doing the kite surfing or zip lining, or where do you fall into this whole thing?
So I play tennis. I've done the golf, the surfing. I'm not a golfer. I'm not a surfer, but I've done all those things. I skydive, but not in Cabo. I think once you get a little bit older, you get married and have kids, you kind of assess things a little bit differently.
It changes quickly. That's true. Yeah.
So, like snorkeling, going to the beach with the family, scuba diving is big. We have Cabo Pumo, which is a beautiful area. Jacques Cousteau considered Cabo and the surrounding area like the most beautiful area, the most bountiful in terms of sea life in the whole world. And so he spent a lot of time in and around this area when he was alive. Yeah.
I mean, it's pretty much has everything to offer. I love it. You're making me want to come down and take a trip, Nick. So let's talk a little bit about, the taxes there. So how does it work as far as like property taxes? And then, what are the sales tax rates on sales items?
So our sales tax is 16%. We call that the IVA or VAT, as some of you know.
Okay.
And our transfer tax when you purchase real estate is 2% when you purchase real estate. And that 2% acquisition tax is paid for by the buyer. And your annual taxes is ridiculously low. On average, it's 1/10 of 1% of the property value. So
1/10 of 1%.
Yeah. So
wow.
Our $500,000 property owner is paying $500 a year in real estate taxes.
That's incredible. How about insurance?
So if we're talking health insurance.
Well, let's talk about, so let's say to insure the property first.
Okay, yeah. So we have insurance brokers that are both in the States and here in Mexico that can underwrite your house policy, hazard and contents. From what I found, it's very comparable to what you'll find back home. And so, you have to be careful because if you're buying into a condominium, you need to know, does the condominium complex provide the insurance for the building? So I just have to do contents, for example.
Right, just personal property policy, basically.
Exactly. So that would be a lot more affordable than getting, the actual structure itself.
Mm-hmm.
And then, so that's housing insurance, very similar to back in the States.
So you kind of alluded to the other type of insurance, and a lot of people, especially seniors or retirees or soon to be retirees, one of their biggest concerns is healthcare, right? What kind of access to healthcare are we going to have? And obviously that would be even more, a little bit complex maybe where you're at. What kind of providers and hospitals are in the area, and how does it work as far as having, US-based insurance, or do you have to have different insurance, or how does that work?
Yeah, so when I first moved here, it was a lot different than what it is now. And there's bigger hospitals now, more skilled surgeons and physicians.
Mm-hmm.
Most of them are coming from mainland Mexico, the big cities like Mexico City, Guadalajara. And what I have found, I actually just did a video segment on this a couple weeks ago with Dr. Mahino, who is like a knee and hip replacement doctor. I mean,
Okay.
residency in Ohio. And so these are doctors that are from Mexico. They get their do the residency in the States, and then they come down to Mexico where they're from and start practicing at a fraction of the cost of what we will find back home. So I was amazed that you can do like hip surgery for like a third of the cost that it's back.
Wow. And you've got some, I mean, just some highly trained physicians down there as well, right? So it's not what you think of. It's kind of the underground, doctor that you're going to get like, get it done for, half the price.
Right. No, very skilled. And in fact, the medical tourism is growing by leaps and bounds. So it could be as simple as getting a root canal or doing cosmetic type surgery to things like replacing your hip. And so, I'll share that with you, Scott, later. We did a video, it's in the editing process right now, and we'll put that out on our YouTube channel that you can share with your
Awesome. Okay, that would be great. I think that we've covered pretty much everything that I had. Again, if anybody who's watching this right now live, if you have any questions, let us know. Nick, is there something that maybe we didn't cover that you wanted to throw in there that's probably important for people to know?
Yeah, one of the misconceptions that not only you can't own property in Cabo, which we've already discussed, but that it's really expensive to own property and live in Cabo San Lucas. People know Cabo San Lucas because the celebrities, the rich and famous vacation here. And although it's one of the most expensive places in all of Mexico to live, by comparison to most of the big metropolitan cities back home, states and Canada, it's very inexpensive. And this is one example that just blew my mind. So when I was living in Chicago, I never had a maid. I did my own laundry. The 15 years that I've been living here, I have maybe done one load of laundry. I don't clean my own house. I don't do the dishes.
Do you cook?
We literally have a maid come 8 hours a day, 5.5 days a week. And
okay, so what does that cost on average per week? Hey, you got me intrigued on this. So what's the average cost per week to have somebody come in and do those that type of work?
So our family pays on the higher end. Okay, so for a week we pay $150 a week.
$150 a week to have all that taken care of.
So they cook, they clean, they iron, they if you have dogs, walk your dog.
Yeah.
And someone just to be at the house. If you have kids, they come home from school, and my wife and I both work. It's like a babysitter also. So it's really ingrained in the culture in Mexico. Mexico is a very warm, loving culture, very family orientated. And that's some of the more simple things to life, where it's real fast paced back home, that when you come down here, the blood pressure lowers, everything slows down.
Right when you get off the plane, it's just like, right? Relax a little bit. You brought up a good point, because you talked about, you have kids. For families who are thinking of moving there, because obviously there's a lot of people who can work remotely, whether in tech or in some other industry. So this is an option for them. For their kids who are maybe, first to 12th grade, how does it work bringing kids down there who, obviously don't know the language, don't really understand the culture very well? How hard is it to assimilate, and what are the school options for the kids?
Yeah, so we have most of our schools, we have public schools, but most of our foreign buyers that are moving down with a family with kids, they're putting their kids in a private school. So my kids go to school, completely bilingual, and so it's very easy for the non-Spanish speaking clients that are moving down here with kids to assimilate into the culture, the schooling industry. And so it works out really, really well. It's not without its challenges. For sure, you're learning a new language, a new culture. But I mean, at least for adults, you don't have to speak Spanish to survive in Cabo. So many people speak English.
Yeah, that's awesome. And you're obviously you're fluent in Spanish. I think you mentioned to me you studied it through school, and you know, once you live there, I'm sure for a short period of time, it's pretty fast.
Right. No, absolutely. So so my question to you, Scott, when are you moving here?
So every time me and my wife go down there and we're like on, you know, it's usually like a 3-day, maybe, you know, 4 nights type of a thing. And by the end of the trip, it's like, okay, how do we, you know, stay here and not have to leave? Because nobody wants to leave, right? But you got to get back to reality. So I don't know, Nick, we'll have to take this offline. We'll have to talk about it over some breakfast at the office sometime down there.
Sounds good, at the office.
Okay. All right. Well, I think that we've actually we said we were going to be 45 minutes. Nick, we've nailed 45 minutes on the dot. Anyway, hey, listen, I really appreciate you joining us, Nick. A lot of great information. And we do have this recorded for anybody who's online who has, let's see here. Looks like we might have somebody who would like to message something. Let's see if this works here. Oh, we got somebody who wanted to who raised their hand, but it looks like with an older version of Zoom, they're not able to use the voice feature on it.
Oh, no.
And if you had a question, go ahead and just type it in to the chat, and we should be able to take that and answer your question for you. But while we're doing that, you know, again, we'll have this recorded. So if anybody who is on this recording wants to, you know, have a copy, we can certainly send you a copy if you wanted to share that with somebody else or kind of go through and watch it again.
If we have, actually, I'm noticing one of your viewers, Sheila, has a few questions. I can answer those real quick.
If Sheila's on there, go ahead, pick it up, because for some reason I'm not seeing it on my end. So please do.
So Sheila, one of your questions is, if you're living there 2 to 4 months, when it comes to restaurants, are you competing with tourists when it comes to prices in restaurants? So a little secret here, Sheila, there are a couple companies that, for example, the Cabo Passport, where it's a group of restaurants and activity companies where you can get anywhere from 20 to 50% discount if you have this card. It costs $80. So if you're here for 2 to 4 months, it's well worth it to get that card, which is good for a full year. And usually in that first purchase, second purchase, it pays for itself. With that being said, also for us local residents to have a driver's license that can show that they're permanent or semi-permanent residents here, most of the restaurants give 20%, 10% discounts. You just ask your waiter, and what I have found, the majority of the restaurants do offer discounts. So that's one of your questions. The other question,
I think we had was there another question from her also?
Yeah, what about a Canadian citizen who may choose to purchase with Canadian dollars against US dollars? So our real estate market is in US dollars, as weird as that might sound being in Mexico. So our Canadian clients do have that exchange rate risk because they're converting from Canadian to US, and then unfortunately the Canadian dollar is like 70 cents to the US dollar right now. So really there is no other way other than from time to time there will be a Canadian seller and they would be interested in an offer in Canadian dollars. Very rare, very, very rare. And the reason why is our Canadian sellers want to get the benefit of the US dollar when they sell. And so—
Right, the exchange rate, right?
Yeah, exactly. So it's very unrare. Just so you know, my hundreds of transactions I've done, never seen it happen. So it could happen, but very rare.
Are you guys doing, actually we have the question from Anna. So Anna, thanks for posting this. Want to know if you sell an income property in the States, can you do a 1031 exchange to Cabo? I love that question. That's a great question.
So unfortunately, no. You cannot, because it's not a like property exchange. The US IRS will look at that. U.S. property, not like a Mexican property because it's in a different country. With that being said, you bought a Mexican property and sold it and then bought another Mexican property, yes, you could do a 1031 exchange.
How about, are you seeing people buy it with their IRA?
Yes.
So they have like, okay, so if you've got money saved up in an IRA, then how does that work to be able to make the purchase down there through your IRA? Like, let's say self-directed, or what does it have to be?
Yeah, so it's a self-directed IRA, and you set up a U.S. LLC that is the name of the custodian of that self-directed IRA, and the U.S. LLC is the beneficiary of the real estate trust you set up here in Mexico. And so the IRS has strict guidelines on how that money is handled so that it's still, you still have that tax shelter. So
right.
You can't use the property for personal use. It has to be used as an investment. Where it can get a little bit tricky is with the self-directed IRA, you could do 50% of the purchase with the self-directed IRA funds and 50% from post-tax funds. So that's where it could be a little bit looked at, well, if I use that property 50% of the time, but the other 50% of the time I rent it out, that's where it can get a little bit gray, and that, you know, we just defer to our clients consulting with the U.S. accountant on that. Yeah,
so you want to have, like, obviously you said, a CPA, tax planner, maybe a wealth manager, everybody kind of involved to make sure the strategy is the right way to do it, but obviously you guys can get it done. Just, I have to ask, cryptocurrency, is anybody buying houses with Bitcoin yet? Because I know everybody talks about it and they want to, right?
Not yet. Not yet.
Not yet.
Yeah.
Okay. It's not really happening here too much either. I mean, a little bit, but yeah, it's not commonplace.
Yeah, and typically Mexico, it trails the U.S. market in what it's doing and what's happening by a year or two. So when it becomes more prevalent in the U.S., give it a couple of years, and then we might be able to start seeing it here in Mexico.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, great. I don't see any more questions. Do you see any over on your end, Nick? I want to make sure that we've got everybody covered here.
Sheila just had one more question.
Go ahead, Sheila.
If you were to move down full-time, what is the legalities of permanent residence for Canadian citizens? So if you move down full-time permanent residency, good question, whether you're American or Canadian. I have an immigration attorney that can walk you through that whole process. Just to give you an idea, it'll take a month or two to go through that whole process, and about $700 US. And but not a problem whatsoever. A lot of our clients get that permanent resident visa. It's my recommendation when you buy property to go ahead and do that, because then you can go ahead and also set up a Mexican bank account.
That seems pretty quick, a month or two for the whole process.
Yes, yes.
Wow. All right. All right. Okay, I think that we might have hit the end. Again, if there's any questions, if you're seeing this on a recorded version online, contact us directly. We'll get you in touch with Nick and his team down there. Again, they've got everything covered as far as buying, to move or investing in real estate in Cabo. So you can reach us at info@leavingthebayarea.com. And Nick, again, this has been great. A lot of fantastic information. Appreciate you taking the time to join us.
You got it. It's been a lot of fun.
Okay, awesome. All right, take care, everybody. Thanks again.
Bye.
Okay, bye now.